It's supposed to be a mirror image.
We can start over if you want.
Can we Oh, we're live!
Nah.
Crap.
Happens all the time.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live. I'm your host, Matt Dilloney. Joining me this week, Martin Wagner.
Howdy. Okay, so your basic points on the subject of belief were, I know you've said this. Now, you've said, first off, that people can't really choose what they believe.
Yes.
Okay. Now, elaborate on that a little bit.
I don't believe that belief is subject to the will in the simple sense, in that you could simply say, I believe I can fly. I believe I can flap my wings and fly. I don't believe you could ever really believe that, no matter how hard, no matter how much you wish that it might be true. Your will and your preferences and choices can affect your beliefs because they affect the process that you're going to use to decide upon your beliefs. Belief is a matter of being convinced that a proposition is true. You have to be convinced. That process is the important part. It's your will and your desires and your choices that may affect that process. Mm-hmm. And by saying that, what I mean is, if I really want to believe that there's life after death, let's say, I couldn't simply say, I believe there's life after death, and really believe it. I can act like I believe it, but what I do is, based on that desire for it to be true, mm-hmm. I begin to use it as a filter when I'm analyzing the evidence, so that I pay more attention to evidence that seems to support the things that I want.
Confirmation bias, yeah.
So you can develop a confirmation bias that way, and in that sense, your will can influence your beliefs.
Yeah. I think that certainly what influences what a person believes and how devoutly they believe it is directly proportional to the degree in which you can test it out in the real world, right? The whole I believe I can fly example that you gave, well, that's really easy to test. Just go to the edge of a building and jump off, and you'll pretty much have your evidence in the last few seconds of your life.
Don't do that, and if you do, don't sue us.
Do not do this at home, please. No, but when you take an untestable proposition, like I believe that there's an afterlife, or I believe that there's a God watching over me, or I believe that there's this, that, and the other. And you couple the fact that that really cannot be empirically tested in the way that jumping off a building can, and you couple that with the fact that the reason such a belief is held is that a person is looking for a way to manage basic insecurities in their lives. You know, for the fear of death, the fear of just the unknown, not really knowing what the future holds. Say you've had a loved one who has died, and so you want to believe that they're still that they're in peace, and that you'll see them again. Right. That sort of emotional bandage that that we always, whenever some sort of trauma hits us, the degree to which that influences it. I think that a person probably, in those instances, the power of the mind and the power of self-delusion and the ability that people have really to just construct their map of the world in a way that I think makes them feel more comfort. I think you can, in those instances, decide what you believe. And, for example, the afterlife belief. I think that people can decide that they can have that kind of a belief because there's never really going to be an instance where they die and then they come back and they're like, I was wrong. Right?
I don't think that at that level they honestly believe it. I think on that level, they still just want to believe it, and they want to act as if it's a true belief. At the point where you sincerely believe that this is in fact true, I think you have to have been convinced by something, even if it's a poor justification.
But see, I don't think belief is reliant upon evidence. I think that's sort of now crossing the line into, say, a knowledge claim, where you can say, okay, well, I have really good, strong evidence for X claim, and so now I'm comfortable in saying that I know this to be true. Belief, I think, in a lot of ways, it's that Band-Aid, it's that shield that you put up between yourself and reality. And to the degree to which, self-delusion, a person allows self-delusion to convince themselves in, say, a belief in a God or an afterlife, or in, I have a psychic power or something. It's only in as much as that belief never really gets to be challenged directly by empirical evidence that the delusion just, I was talking.
Belief isn't something that separates us from reality. I believe this coffee cup is here. I believe in a great many things.
I think it does. I think that there are people like, okay, well, you can say the dishonest ones. There's a lot of
things that are true.
Well, you can,
and we do, I hope.
Well, as opposed to just say knowing that they're true. Like, I don't believe the sun rises in the east.
Okay,
Yeah.
one of the things we talked about today was definitions.
Yeah. See, that's where we need to...
The way I defined the terms was belief is the acceptance of a proposition as true, and knowledge was belief to a degree of certainty, and it's up to the individual to determine at what point the degree of certainty is sufficient to qualify as knowledge. Knowledge is a subset of belief. Has to be. Is there anything you could possibly know that you don't believe?
Oh, all right. Well, in as much as that's... Okay, I agree with that statement.
So knowledge is a subset of belief, and my criteria that I use to distinguish between knowledge and belief is the degree of certainty that you have for it, in the sense that as I become increasingly more, I can believe things, barely believe it, I can kind of believe it, I can believe it more strongly, I can believe it very strongly, then all of a sudden we approach something. I don't think you can ever get to absolute certainty, which I talked about today,
Yeah.
but you can get to a point where your belief is so indistinguishable from absolute certainty that you're assured to such a high degree of certainty that you might as well call it knowledge for all practical intents and purposes. Because if that doesn't qualify as knowledge, then there is no such thing as knowledge.
But then there are people who have levels of belief that are that strong about things that are just patently false.
Yes,
like
you have to be willing to accept, and I talked about this today, that your beliefs may be wrong, and even those things that you label as knowledge may turn out to be wrong. It's all tentative and subject to the review of new evidence. But the knowledge, for example, that the Earth orbits the Sun, that I believe the Earth orbits the Sun, I believe it based on evidence. It has been demonstrated as real to such a high degree of certainty that it would be patently absurd for me to discover that it's wrong.
Yeah.
And in
it's
that
less
condition,
rational to disbelieve it.
right. In that condition, I would call that knowledge. I know the Earth orbits the Sun.
Yeah.
Could turn out to be, wrong once we develop some new understanding of the way that, physics
Perhaps
and the universe.
framing my whole point of view on this differently is that I think you're talking about belief and knowledge as acts, the human act of believing
Right.
and of knowledge, and I suppose I'm talking more in terms of the word belief as a noun, like this is a belief versus
Yes.
a fact, and
that would be different.
yeah, okay, and the fact is the thing
I'm
that
talking
doesn't
about
change whether.
epistemology, and you're talking about phenomenology.
Yeah, there we are. Right. Okay.
Kind of. I think
Yeah.
somebody's going to call me on
No,
that.
I think you're right to a certain degree, but I think that from an epistemological standpoint, I think that yes, people have again an amazing capacity to delude themselves, and
But
the
I think that makes my point, that it's a process by which they convince themselves. It's not a simple matter of will. The idea that you could
but I don't think that
simply-
means the belief is not sincere when it's
No. There's
Okay.
two different scenarios. At some point, the belief can become sincere.
yeah.
And it's through this process of faulty analysis, bad judgment, confirmation bias, these things where our hopes, desires, and preferences have led us to an incorrect conclusion. We then sincerely believe it. The one where I said I didn't think the belief was sincere was when you were talking about people choosing to believe something without evidence. The more simplified, I'm just going to believe this perhaps because it's comfortable.
Right.
In those cases, I would argue that that person doesn't actually believe the claim they want to believe, or they believe in belief type thing.
Or this would be the motivation behind, say, the Pascal's wager type believer.
Yeah, the safe bet.
People who just you don't really believe
I don't
it,
think
but
that can be.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
one of my arguments against Pascal's wager.
Is that it's extremely dishonest.
Yeah, if your argument is, you're better off just going ahead and believing in Jesus, otherwise you're going to go to hell, then
you don't really believe in Jesus.
you don't
You're
really
just watching
believe
your
it.
ass.
Yeah, you're covering your butt.
Yeah.
We have to say butt, not ass, because asshole got us in trouble.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be a butthole.
Yeah.
All right.